There are two major classes or castes in American society: the college-educated class and what I like to call the life-educated class. First up is the college-educated class or white-collar class. This class is led by the professional managerial class, which roughly correlates with those with advanced degrees. The white-collar class are only around a third of the population, which would make it difficult for them to maintain control in a democracy, but they use various strategies to make up for their massive numerical disadvantage. They dominate corporate media, government bureaucracies, and academia. They are highly organized. They also absorb various ethnic minorities and immigrant voters to supplement their numbers, but they do not represent them. They are hierarchical and centralized. A good example of this class, particularly of the professional managerial subset, would be an administrator or professional at a governmental or high-prestige institution, like an Ivy League dean or a public school superintendent. A large portion work in government. Public school teachers are the largest group, as well as large numbers of academics and administrators at public universities. Others are government adjacent, wherein their incomes are largely derived directly or indirectly from government spending. This includes lobbyists, insurance companies, healthcare, media, and finance. As a result, this group generally favors larger government and higher taxes. Crisis arises when there is an oversupply of such elites, all demanding high salaries, as happened in Saudi Arabia when oil prices fell and it became clear that there were too many princes. They tend to favor mass immigration, but mainly only of low-skilled workers, as they do not compete for their own positions and help reduce the cost of services they consume, such as landscaping, housekeeping, and food preparation. They tend to be opposed to organized religion, as this constitutes a threat to their prestige, authority, and power. In place of traditional religion, science and scientism are substituted, as these are largely controlled via scientific authorities by their own class. The core of the PMC, those with advanced degrees, is supported in turn by college graduates, those with only a 4-year diploma, who make up another 20% of the U.S. adult population. Advanced degree holders are only around 15% of U.S. adults. This latter group provides the core of the leadership of this class. They can only dominate by appealing to social and identity issues, such as gender, race, and sexual orientation. The PMC is heavily dominated by urban residents but can compete effectively in wealthy suburbs. Females dominate this class, partly due to their superior ability to compete in college and university settings, as well as due to the superior ability of females to comply. The professional managerial class tends to identify and associate with members of the same class, including those in other countries. They tend to get most of their worldview from established media, as they often work from home or in a cloistered setting, like an office or university, with others of their same worldview and class with low turnover. I would argue that the white-collar class tends to be extremely conservative in the real sense of the word. They do not want any major changes to the economic or educational system. However, they recognize that change is needed to placate the masses. So they focus on social, identity, and environmental issues, as the steps proposed to address them do not threaten their social status and wealth. This class focuses on educational credentials more than on wealth per se, as such credentials prove whether someone can comply with authority. Compliance is the core feature and value system of this class, along with patience and self-control, as these facilitate compliance. Money is seen as gauche to some extent and is thus not flaunted overly, whereas credentials and values are flaunted constantly. If they do engage in conspicuous consumption, it is on experiences like foreign travel or items that confer respect via their values, such as Teslas. They tend to disfavor war from an aesthetic and emotional viewpoint, but often favor wars from the perspective of compliance with authority, as well as out of their professed values, like what they refer to as democracy and human rights. They can and are easily manipulated in this way, as exemplified by the Ukraine war. The members of the PMC rely on the system for protection both physically, through police and private security, and legally, through courts and lawyers. Favored activities of this class include hiking, mountain biking, skiing, tennis, and golf. Individual sports tend to be favored over team sports, aside from low-contact sports like basketball and soccer. Substance abuse, including alcohol and prescription anxiety medications like Xanax, is commonly a result of work stress, which is higher by self-report than the blue-collar class. One of the defining characteristics of the PMC is that they have a high prevalence of self-reported bullshit jobs, as defined by the late, great David Graeber, which may lead to higher self-reported stress. Graeber meant by this term any jobs that the person performing it feels is of no value to society or even of negative value. The PMC value physical health and good nutrition, and both are actively pursued. They are generally paid as salary, and most have health insurance benefits through work. Employment is largely full-time and fairly stable. Median personal income is $77,000 for college grads and $90,000 for master's or higher graduates. This is double that of high school graduates. Their median household income shows even larger disparities, likely due to more members of this class being in stable marriages, as opposed to single-parent households. The fertility rate of this class is around 1.8 children per woman, which is not enough to maintain the population. They dominate fields such as law, media, medicine, government, finance, insurance, and the corporate sector. The ideal exemplar of this class would be a female bureaucrat with a master's or professional degree who worked her way up the government or corporate hierarchy and rejected having her own family in favor of her career ambition. Champions of the PMC include Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, and Anthony Fauci. The other large class is the life-educated class, also referred to as the non-college or blue-collar class. This class makes up 65% of U.S. adults. Most owe their wealth and status, such as it is, to no one. This class is not really led by anyone, but more recently a group of tech entrepreneur counter-elites are vying for control. This group is quite non-hierarchical and decentralized. The ideal is a self-employed tradesman or small business owner, for example, a journeyman plumber or family farmer. They tend to be poorly organized as they lack access to capital. When they do organize, it is either as unions or as religious groups, neither of which really represent their interests. The blue-collar class opposes mass immigration, but mainly only of low-skilled workers. High-skilled immigrants are encouraged by the entrepreneurial tech elites for their own benefit. The class is heavily dominated by rural and suburban residents, but can compete effectively in working-class urban areas. Males do dominate this class, partly due to their lesser ability to compete in college or university settings, and partly due to their proclivity to defy authority. The blue-collar class includes certain government employees dominated by male non-college grads, including military, police, and firefighters. They tend to identify and associate with members of the same class, including those of other races and ethnicities, but largely on the basis of being patriotic Americans. This tends not to extend across national boundaries, even for co-religionists, such as other Christians in Latin America or the Middle East. This class tends to get most of their worldview from co-workers and customers or clients, or from non-established media, as they often work out in the world with the public in the service sector or in factory settings with high turnover. They tend to not understand the system and the problems driving it very well, and thus are susceptible to members of the counter-elite, the high-tech aristocracy, leading them in a direction that may not truly help them. The blue-collar class tends to value material wealth over credentials. They tend to spend money conspicuously on things like pickup trucks, four-wheelers, snowmobiles, detached garages, or other home improvements. Religion and patriotism run in parallel, but do not compete with materialism. They tend to focus on skills and physical strength, rather than on credentials, as such characteristics demonstrate masculinity and independence. Work or business and the role of protector and provider are the core features and value system of this class, along with independence and no small measure of defiance, thus the focus on owning guns and knowing how to use them. Paradoxically, conformity with peers is highly valued, as seen in the lack of interest in fashion, learning foreign languages, or being in any way a non-standard melting pot American. But this does not imply compliance with authority. This group relies less on the system for protection. For example, they own guns rather than depend on police, and also utilize an unwritten code of conduct rather than rely on the legal system. They are generally paid by the hour and may or may not have health insurance benefits through work. Employment may be seasonal or part-time and often precarious. Median personal income is $47,000 for high school grads and $55,000 for associate degree holders. Median household income is somewhat more, but not substantially so, due to many single-parent households. Their fertility rate is around 2.1 children per woman, barely enough to maintain the population, but higher than the white-collar class. They do not dominate any sector, but have the strongest influence in military, law enforcement, agriculture, and manufacturing. Favored activities of this class include motor vehicle repair, Woodworking and DIY projects, off-roading, shooting, football, hockey, combat sports such as MMA or boxing and contact or team sports in general, plus motorsports like NASCAR. Substance abuse in this group is commonly a result of injuries at work, leading to the use of opioids. Stress from overtime and shift work often lead to increased alcohol use. Physical health and good nutrition are less highly valued by this group, despite physical strength being valued and used daily at work and at home. Hypertension, diabetes, and obesity are much more prevalent than in the white-collar class. The blue-collar class tends to disfavor war from a self-interest viewpoint as they are the ones that fight them, but favor wars from the perspective of patriotism and religious identity, as symbolized in the phrase God and country, and they can easily be manipulated by elites in this way, as happened with the Iraq War. The avatar or ideal exemplar of this class would be a male college dropout entrepreneur who started one or more successful companies and started a family as the provider and protector of numerous children. Champions include Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk.